the next speaker, we'd like to welcome back Uncle Ashok back to the stage, and he'll be speaking on achieving spiritual growth in the SSIO.
Om Sai Ram. I offer my most loving and humble pranams to our beloved Bhagwan. My topic this afternoon is achieving spiritual growth in the SSIO organization. And before I go into the topic, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank Neville for the work he did in compiling the leadership manual, which contains a wealth of information about what officers need to know about Swami and the organization. I'd like to approach the talk from a different angle. Neville's book contains a lot of very, very wonderful ideas and things we should aspire towards. The talk is an officer's struggle in the organization with the teachings. A very senior officer once said to my predecessor that you can actually lose your spirituality in the SSIO organization. And you know, we hear all these wonderful things, and then you hear how someone says you can actually lose your spirituality in the SSIO organization. And I think that only leads us to really stop and think about our participation, our engagement in the organization, and whether it is taking us towards Swami or away from Swami. And that is some of the things I'd like to talk about today afternoon. Let me start at a point which was my greatest inspiration in working in the SSIO organization. Sometime when I was national chair, I came across a book entitled "And the Word Was God, Part 1. And it's a book of quotations, that's all it has. And it's assembled very, very nicely, so if you're looking for Swami's quotation in any area, you'll find it very easily in that book. But once you turn the cover over and turn a few pages, it will be a page where Swami's photo is there. And a message is reproduced, which Swami had given to Charles Penn. And the message was read out in 1985 and 1990 during the World Conferences. And there were some of the points in that one page which really had a deep impact on me, which I dare say really ignited in me that desire to serve him. And I just want to highlight two sentences, if I may. In the first one he said, "Only those whom I have called can serve me." And in the second one he said, "I have prepared you for this work over many incarnations. I have drawn you to me." And when I read that, I didn't even understand it. Our experience of life is in this birth. We don't see our last birth. And yet Swami is saying that he has prepared us over many births in order to do this work. I realized I did not need to understand it. I realized all I needed to do was to take that opportunity to serve him. Because if I did not do so, I may not get that chance again in the next 5 births, 10 births, or 100 births. God forbid we should come back so often. A few years ago, in July 2015, Amir Deshpande, who you all know, gave a talk in the Kulban Hall at Guru Purnima time. And he recounted an incident when Swami was sitting with the students. And Swami asked the question, what is the rarest phenomenon in this universe? And one of the students suggested to achieve liberation. And Swami said, no, because that is the destiny of all of you. And so Swami said the rarest phenomenon is to be a contemporary of the living avatar. And then he went further and he said, even more rare than that is to know the living avatar. And yet, even more rare than that is to love God in human form. And truly, the rarest phenomenon in the universe is to serve the Lord. We have been given this opportunity in this life. We have been told expressly, there are no excuses anymore. We can worry about the day-to-day routines. We can worry about everything else. But this chance may not come again. And that struck me, that is how I must use my life. I had the privilege, as I said earlier, of serving the organization for many years. And I started as a center president. And I must say that being center president and having a national chair above you is very, very different from being national chair. It was certainly more intense being national chair. And there were many, many challenges being national chair. But there were also many experiences. And the learning was far more intense. But stepping down as national chair after some years, and the beauty of hindsight, where I was able to look back on my service, has taught me a lot of lessons. I've learned a lot just looking back at those events, looking how I conducted myself, and how I dealt with different situations. And that really has been a great education for me. This need for introspection, which I suggest is important to all of our spiritual lives, was highlighted to me in a very different context. In 2009, I did a 5-day mediation course, which was all the lawyers were doing. And the course was structured so that the first 3 days you were actually receiving instructions about how to do a mediation. And on the 4th day they give you a trial run and you get some of the instructors sit with you. And on the 5th day there's an actual assessment. And on the 4th day, after one of the trials, the assessor sat with me. And this time he was not even a lawyer, he was an accountant. And he gave me what were his 3 secrets of conducting a mediation. And this is what he said. What is this about? What is this really about? And what are you going to do about it? And you take the words in and you take them literally. But then later on I thought about it and I realized that this formula works equally in my spiritual life. And I dare say in all our spiritual lives. What do you want from your spiritual life? What do you really want from your spiritual life? And what are you willing to do about it? And the answer to what you want and what you really want is probably very different. These questions force me to dive deep into my heart and to ask myself, what do I really want from my involvement? Fortunately, I discovered their answer after a lot of pain and a lot of mistakes. And I'll keep that answer to the very end of this talk, so that I know you can't run away. It brings me to the first lesson I want to share with you. It can be very, very difficult being in the SSIO organization when you are caught in what might be described politely as an unfortunate situation. And you can be very, very challenged when you are caught in that unfortunate situation. But I would respectfully suggest that it's very important at all times to keep an open mind and to keep an open heart to the lessons that those challenges can teach you. Please, please, please avoid the trap of playing the role of the victim and blaming others for your shortcoming. I don't say that lightly. If there's one thing I learned about national chair and the difficulty of being national chair, and Murali may or may not agree, depending on your experience, if they're not happy with anything, they project it to the national chair. And sometimes that was very difficult. But someone said to me a very sweet thing. Said, it's only the sweet fruit that people throw rocks at. And that was a sort of comfort. But avoid the trap of being a victim and saying, how do I blame others for my failings? Your reactions to these challenges, I suggest, will tell you where you are on your spiritual journey and where you must go. Rather than looking outside for the source of your difficulties, look within you, because all of the answers are within you, none are outside of you. Many years ago, someone said something I did not understand at that time, but I slowly began to understand. He said, Swami brings out the worst in you so that you can see it and be confronted with it. And we all need to decide what we're going to do when that demon within us is brought outside of us. We all have a choice to make. When we act within the organization from a place of our ego, unfortunately we are only digging deeper the hole that our egos have put us into. We can choose to keep on digging if we want to. Or we can decide to stop digging and to climb out of that hole and to move forward from these challenges. That requires a lot of honest reflection. For me, this is one practical aspect of spirituality. To put it in Swami's words, spirituality is giving up the animal so that we remember that we are human and intimately divine. Unless we are willing to confront those demons within us, unless we are willing to confront our reactions to situations, our anger to situations, how do we move forward? I've heard many people sometimes complain there's too much politics in the Sai Center. And I'd like to talk about that for a moment. First of all, I would say it is inevitable that when you get a group of people together, that they will, from time to time, disagree. It's unavoidable. We all come from different places, we have different expectations, we are at different places in our spiritual journey. The important thing is not that we disagree. The important thing is how we resolve our disagreements, how we manage our disagreements. And if we don't manage them wisely, and if we allow our egos to get into the way, then of course there's going to be politics in the center. So I used to say that politics actually serves a purpose, because it allows us to see for ourselves what that situation is, what our role in that situation is, and to decide whether we want to continue to be in that situation or to pull away from that situation and make ourselves better. So I used to say, politics in the center is inevitable. And in fact, in any prayer organization, in any family social organization. 2 weeks ago, that storyline changed. I was in Hong Kong, we were doing a leadership training, and I told exactly the same story, how politics in the center is inevitable. And then when I finished my talk, I went to sit down, and I was sitting in the far corner where our MCs are sitting. And there was the altar in front, and there was a screen in front, which we had put down. But because I was sitting right at the edge, I could see Swami's photo behind the screen. And no sooner after I had sat down, this thought came into my mind. There is no politics in the Sai Center, there is politics in you. At which point I said, ouch. But that one comment, that thought that came, reinforces Swami's essential teachings, that the world around us is simply a reflection of the world inside of us. And if we are pure in our intentions, the world will be pure. And if we are not pure, if we are imperfect in our inner selves, the world around us will be imperfect. So when something upsets you, I suggest look within yourself and ask, what do I learn from this? Why has this upset me so much? There is a very important lesson for us in these situations, and that is to learn to let go. Let go even of our own ideas, and more importantly, let go of our need to be right. It is that need to be right that flames the fire of conflict. The Buddha once said, it is better to be kind than to be right. Wayne Dyer said the same thing in his talk entitled One Way to Transform Your Life. The Buddha also said this, and this is a warning to all of us who tend to get angry in response or reaction to situations. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. In other words, anger burns, and it burns the person who is angry. Which brings me to another lovely quotation from the Buddha, which came to me in a little picture on WhatsApp. And it said, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. This opportunity to serve is the greatest gift. It is challenging. But those challenges should inspire you to change, to get rid of the anger. If any situation makes you angry or dissatisfied, let me say this. You all have the power within you to change that reaction. It is easier said than done. And if you don't do it, you'll just burn in that fire. And ask me, because I know. But as you decide to let go, as you decide to let things be, knowing that Swami will take care, suddenly you find that turmoil of being so engaged in the disagreement gives way, and you have greater peace and greater happiness in your service. You know, when I was working more actively with the international organization, one of the senior officers gave me what I think was really the best advice I've received in a very long time. And she was telling me that when you work with Dr. Reddy, Dr. Anupam, Rohan, and that lot, they're a very open group. They're very receptive to listening and to the ideas. But she gave me a really good piece of advice. Give them your views and just let it be. Whether they take it or they don't, let it be. You've done your bit. And I realized that so long as I speak to them with courtesy, so long as I am temperate in my own moods, they do listen. And I think sometimes the problems we have in the organization is when we allow our emotions to get the better of us. When we speak without that sweetness. When we speak in a way that people automatically put barriers in front of us. And that's when people stop communicating with each other. So do not be loud in your speech. Be loving in your speech, be kind in your speech. And that is, for me, a very, very sensitive time now. Because you've heard I've come from Hong Kong. And many of you have heard what's happening in Hong Kong. And I'm not sure what the solution is, but there are solutions. But the biggest problem we have now in Hong Kong is that people are so entrenched They just don't want to talk to each other. And so all we're doing is shooting ourselves in the foot in the international community. So I would say to all of you in your SSI centers, whatever views you have to express them with courtesy, without emotion, and then let it be. And if your leaders are wrong, time will tell. But the greatest sin, I think, is to create discord, is to create disunity in the SSI organization. And therefore, when you work, try your best to build consensus. The thing that's missing in Hong Kong is the protesters have 5 demands, and the slogan is not one less. Well, where is that going to lead us? We have to talk to each other. We have to compromise. And if our leaders are there, trust them. And if they're wrong, time will tell you they're wrong. But the worst thing we can do is sow disunity in our SSI organization. Which brings me to my second lesson. We sometimes forget that Swami is and has always been the spiritual and administrative head of our organization. And many times we say or do things within the organization which neglect his presence. And sometimes we even forget why we're in the organization. And I would simply say, trust Swami to deal with the difficulties and to deal with the challenges. It brings me to my third lesson, and I need to finish quickly because of time. The only purpose of our participation in the SSI organization is to seek self-realization. Now, I know you've heard that 100 times. I heard it 100 times. But if I have to be truthful, many times I forgot that. Especially when the challenges raise their ugly heads. There is only one purpose of your engagement in the SSI organization. Never, never forget it. It is to seek self-realization. And anything that takes you away from that goal is not for you. If you get angry, that's not taking you to self-realization, it's taking you away from self-realization. Swami said this in 1947 when he wrote to his brother. And I think it's important from time to time to remind ourselves. He said, I have a task to foster all mankind and ensure for all of them lives full of bliss. I have a vow to lead all who stray away from the straight path again into goodness and to save them. I am attached to a work that I love, to remove the suffering of the poor and to grant them what they lack. His message here was about uplifting our consciousness. And it was only in the third point when he talks about seva to the poor, where he came in answer to the call of the poor. Now this is where he has blessed us. I've been listening to some of your seva activities. And this is where Swami is allowing all of us to partake in his mission. And we partake in his mission for one purpose only. To transform ourselves. To take us on that path towards self-realization. In partaking in his mission, if we want to progress, watch that ego carefully. Watch those 6 inner enemies carefully. And run away. The minute they rear their head, run away. Come back to what I said earlier, be kind. Swami talks about sweetness in your speech. Respect your elders. And if they don't listen, let it be. You've done what you have to do. Swami himself said, the sole objective of all the SSI organizations is to enable man to discover his innate divinity, regain his self-confidence and faith in God. That's it, full stop. There's nothing more as the goal of SSI organization. And I'm sorry to say, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but many people, including SSI devotees, misunderstand the purpose of the SSI organization. We are known for our beautiful bhajans. We are known for all the wonderful seva we do. But the action and that devotion are only means by which we progress on our journey to self-realization. They are not the end. The study of our scriptures is a very important sadhana. And sometimes it is said in the organization that the least popular activity is the study circle. Unfortunately, it is the most important activity, because it is that study which enables you, which gives you the understanding that will infuse your devotion, it will infuse your service with the proper understanding to help you transform yourself. There was a time about 10 years ago, we moved the type of sevas we were doing, and we started doing street sleeper, Narayan Seva. We used to serve food to those who sleep on the streets. And when we started, I go for the breakfast sevas, and so we start about 6 o'clock in the morning, and the coordinator in charge will prepare 300 bags, including a 3-in-1 tea packet, a cup, a stirrer, a noodle packet, a biscuit packet, and a few other things. And then some others will bring other items, a bottle of water, fresh fruit, a sandwich, and maybe a hot bun. And that will all be assembled at the street just before we go out and serve. And what had happened was, as we were packing hurriedly on the street, and we had to hurry, we were instinctively putting the packed bags on the floor. And then it struck me, how is it that we're doing that? If we are serving the street sleepers, then you might understand how is it that we put the packed bags on the street. But if we are serving Swami in the street sleepers, we cannot do that. And almost instantly, we picked them up and we devised another system. And so that understanding that you are serving Swami in that person changes everything. I call all of them elder brothers. I approach them with far more respect than I otherwise might have. I know I'm grateful to them because they allow me the chance to learn about compassion. They allow me the chance to do something for somebody else. They allow me the chance to earn my Guru's love. I should be so grateful. And that is why study is so important. I'm not suggesting that bhajans are not important. I'm not suggesting seva is not important. Of course they are. But we must understand their true purpose, which is firstly to overcome our ego, secondly to purify us, thirdly to make us worthy of His grace. Because it is only with His grace that He will reveal His divinity to us, and more importantly, He will reveal our divinity to us. Which brings me to the fourth point. The SSIO movement requires constant study and contemplation on the teachings. It requires self-reflection. It requires practice. I've always said, if your faith does not transform you, your faith is of no use to you. It must transform you. It must soften the heart. It must take you closer to Swami. And if after 10, 15, 20 years we're still angry, then we need to stop and think why. What is it that we must let go? In our silent prayer, in our silent contemplation, pray to Him. Because I have had many experiences where in my morning prayers, a thought will come. I don't want to pretend I hear His voice. I don't want to pretend I see Him. Ideas come. 2 years ago, we were amending our constitution in Hong Kong. And the AGM was 3 weeks away. And I'm sitting minding my own business, doing my prayers, and the thought comes, have you gone to the company's registry to seek approval? I came out of my prayers and I said, oh dear, no I haven't. And I ran to the company's registry and they said, we need 1 month to approve it. And I said, sorry ma'am, my AGM is in 3 weeks. And so we started the process. Where did that thought come from? The approval letter came 1 day before my AGM. Swami's in control, He's in charge. We have to trust Him, we have to allow Him to be in control. Brings me to the next point, Swami is the compassionate mother. He constantly gives and he forgives. He is gracious and he is compassionate. And these are not just words. I promise you, they're just not words. That is who he is. We all make mistakes. Swami said, they are nothing but mistakes. Therefore, we must retake. It is time to acknowledge our mistakes. I've seen too many people who brush their mistakes under the carpet, who are more willing to blame it on somebody else. If you made a mistake, you made a mistake. Get on with life. Improve yourself and just move on. Our destinies are in our own hands. Let us turn away from the 6 inner enemies and seek purity within. Brother Krishna was talking about the SSIO organization and the purpose of the SSIO organization. My experience is very different. The SSIO organization is not just a temple. It is a place where we will burn and our egos will burn. Swami gives the example of the goldsmith. You give him your gold and what does he do? He puts it into the crucible. He puts it into the fire in order to melt your gold and to make new gold jewelry. That is what the Sai Center is. Allow Swami to unmake you in that fire so that he may remake you in the way he wants you to be. And that's the only way I think you will find satisfaction in life. Which brings me to my last point. Be grateful and be humble. He provides every blessing. I know he's provided everything for me. I told you this morning that in that time when I was national chair, I really had no time for anything. But he took care of everything. He took care of my legal practice, he took care of my family, he took care of my kids. He will take care of everything if you trust him. Swami used to say we all go to him for trinkets and trash. And looking back, if we are true to ourselves, we know that's true. We were always so eager for that proximity, for him to take the letter. We asked for the ring because someone else got the ring. That's all we ever wanted. But Swami himself asked, how many of you actually want me? And when I read that, it occurred to me, we want all the little things, but how many people want him? Which brings me to the revelation of that secret of what I really want from the SSIO organization. I told you I'd tell you at the end of this series. If there's one thing I only want from the SSIO organization, it's for my Guru to love me. That's all I want, for my Guru to love me. And if I have that, why do I need anything else? If you have that, I promise you, that career at the bar, that money that brings, the car that brings, the property that brings, it all sort of wilts away in unimportance. If you have the love of your Guru,